Hello, I'm Ariam. It is the 5th of July, and I have just discovered a new readathon, which is called the Fourth Nations Readathon. It happens in July and January, but the prompts are actually the same every year. So it is an Avatar: The Last Airbender based readathon, and so basically you choose a nation to join. I choose an Earth, of course. They're my favorite. And then you have levels that to level up to become a master bender. And as the levels go up, there are more prompts and the prompts become harder. So I've already read for level 1 and level 2. Each of them had only one prompt, and the prompts, I read books under 100 pages for both of them. So those were fast and easy. But now I am planning to read for level 3. So the two prompts for level 3 are a book you know nothing about and a book with a one-word title. So I'm not sure yet what I'm reading for a book with one-word title. I have a few options, but I'm planning to start tomorrow for a book I know nothing about with To Break a Covenant by Allison Ames. So what I do know about it, before I looked up it's impossible to know nothing about a book, so I'm counting knowing extremely little about it as knowing nothing about it. So what I know about it is that it is a YA horror with a female main character, and that it takes place in a town, by which I mean not a city. I didn't know if it was a big town or a small town. I did just take it out of the library and look at the actual summary when I did so. So from the actual summary, it is a mining town, so I'm going to guess a smaller town because obviously mining is not such a big thing. And there was actually two towns. There's the old town Moon Basin, which used to be the mining town, and then people moved out of it because they said it's haunted. And now there's the new town, New Basin, where our main character and her friends live. And so their main money is not from mining, but from tourists coming to tour Moon Basin because of the haunted reputation. But the thing is, it really might be haunted. It might not just be a reputation, and our girls decide to go into the mines themselves to explore them. So, sounds quite scary, actually. I'm not planning to start reading it tonight, planning to start reading it tomorrow. Good morning, it is July 7th, and I wanted to update you that yesterday I read 20% of To Break a Covenant. So, I'm going to kind of ignore how I felt about the last bit I read, which was the beginning of chapter 6, just because I wasn't really, in a headspace to really understand what was going on. I was traveling and whatever, but I did really enjoy the first 5 chapters. So the first 5 chapters are actually kind of telling us the backstory. So we have our main character, Clem, and then we have her group of friends. So it's kind of telling us the backstory of how she met each friend and how they became a friend group. So the other characters are her best friend Nina, their friend Lizzie, and this girl they just met, Piper. And Piper's dad is an engineer who's working on the mines, and he's the one who actually invites them to go down into the mines. And what I'm really enjoying about the format of this book, that at the end of each chapter, there is a segment where you see unused footage of TV shows, like ghost hunting TV shows. Because this town is famous for being haunted, so there are lots of ghost hunting TV shows that come down there. And and so far, until chapter 6, they were actually the ones really giving the horror, because before that was just about, our characters' regular life in this town. So now in chapter 6, they have actually gone down into the mine, and that's where the horror is starting. But like I said, I was not really in a place to understand this twist in the plot, because I was traveling in that. So I didn't enjoy it, but I feel like that's more the fault of where I was anxious about getting off the bus at the right stop than actually the book. So my only complaint about the book so far is that the chapters definitely feel a little long. I am definitely feeling when I get to the end and I see where it says unused footage of blah 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 fake TV show, I'm like, oh, okay. We finally got to the end of this chapter. Not because I'm not enjoying it, but because the chapters do feel a little long. Okay, hello. It's still July 7th, just like 14 hours later, and I am 48.5% into Break a Covenant. And things really, really started happening. So yesterday I read until basically they had entered the mine and they were in it, and there were like some vague stuff, but it wasn't really anything happening. And today I read they left the mine, and the second they left the mine, things started happening to them, to the town in general, and it just ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. And I am definitely liking that. Like, I've said before that I like it when horror books just get on straight with the horror. In this one, I didn't mind that we had like kind of a backstory, because it made sense why we're getting the backstory of the girls who are also kind of the town. So yeah, so I didn't mind, but then once we got once we got to the horror part, it ramped up directly, and I'm really happy about that, and it keeps on ramping up. So this is very much like, has got a lot of classic horror tropes, and it's fun. Like, I feel like I can't say much about what I'm enjoying because it would be spoilers. So I am enjoying this book, but we're going to have to talk about the stuff I'm not enjoying instead. So there isn't much that I'm not enjoying. There's only one thing that I'm not enjoying that much, which is the characters themselves. They are not really, they're not characters. They're just archetypes, you know? Like, yeah, they do have a little more to them, but barely. They're like archetypes with like some paint slapped on to make them look a little fuller. Some of that puff paint. So we have our main character, who's the everyman. We have our best friend, the skeptic. Their other best friend, the believer who isn't scared, and then of course we have the newcomer. Oh, I can talk about something I enjoy. So this horror book it's really dissecting the why in horror books. It's always the newcomer that the horror happens to. Like, they come to these creepy towns, and it's always the newcomer that the horror happens to. And the reason that is given and is really good, like, I can't say it because it's spoilers, but in this case it's good. I really enjoyed that it dissected that. And I'm really curious to see especially what happens to our newcomer's dad, who's the main guy the bad thing is happening to, which kind of does say stuff about the characters, because even though we do have our main character and bad stuff is happening to her, I'm not as interested, because like the characters are just like, they're just stick figures, and so I'm interested in the guy that has the most happening to him. Also, I did discover today that I kind of have a limit with horror where it almost gets boring, you know? Like, I'm not sure how that happens, but like if I read enough horror, like in a space amount of time, I'm more likely to get bored, I think, than in fantasy or other types of stories, basically. Probably like, there's like some part of your brain that's just like, okay, we had enough, like, so, because horror is fun, but it's fun in the way a roller coaster is fun, which is, it's scary. It is scary. So I guess there's the part of your brain that's like, okay, amygdala, calm down. It's not actually scared, which would be the PFC. So, yeah. Anyways, that's my update for today. See you next time. Okay, it is July 8th. And I am 68.8% into To Break a Covenant. So it's very hard to speak about because, like I said, at this point, everything is a spoiler. I don't think I can say anything that's not a spoiler. But I'm very interested in why this is happening. Like, everything, like, we've got, like, this book is having it's giving like a lot of hints, but so far there's nothing to lead us in any one direction, which is also the character's problem. They're like, okay, we can see this and we can see this, and the characters are actually even more trouble than us because we're obviously reading it in a neat book and we're like, oh, we can see this reoccurring and this reoccurring, and from the character's perspective, deep in the shit, they can't see it. Interested to see where it's going. Hello, it's July 10th, and I finished reading To Break a Covenant earlier this morning, and to be honest, I did not end up loving it. Last time you saw me, I was enjoying it. I had a few problems with it, but overall I was enjoying it. But now that I've reached the end, I just did not end up liking it because, like I said, last time you saw me, we had all these plot strands, and we were trying, and the girls, our main characters, are trying to figure out how to put them together. And that never ended up happening. What is going on? That just never ended up happening. Like, they never put them together. And so it just felt like, in the end, it just felt like we had all these plot strands that went nowhere. And so that was really not fun. And also, there was never a climax. There was never, like, an apotheosis. Like, yes, there was, but it was not on screen. We saw it right before the apotheosis, and we saw right after it, but we didn't actually get to see it. And, like, that's supposed to be, like, you know, that's the part where you're waiting for the whole book. Like, obviously, the journey to get there is fun as well, but that's, like, really the part that you're waiting to read. So not having it just kind of isn't fun. And then also, like, I can't really explain this because doing so would spoil the book, but probably partially because of the two things I just mentioned, that we didn't get to see the climax, and because I should be really doing this in front of me, not the camera, and because the plot trends never got anywhere. So while things change for our characters, they don't really change for the reader. And especially because, and that also probably occurs because, like I said, the characters were flat. So, like, if it was characters that weren't flat that we really cared about, whatever, if things changed for them, even if we didn't see the climax, it would be super disappointing and annoying, but we'd still be like, oh, the characters. But because we don't care about the characters that much, so it just, yeah, the whole ending of this book was not fun, and it really, I don't want to say it ruined the book for me, because I feel like it just, yeah, but it just made it so that the book felt like it had, like, why did I read all that just to get to this ending? And so I finished that. Like I said, that was for a prompt of a book I know nothing about, which I decided to interpret as know very little about, because it's very hard to know nothing about a book. And I want to read books that are already on my TBR. And there was the other prompt of read a book with a one-word title, and I actually read that 2 days ago. I just didn't vlog it because it wasn't that interesting. I read one of the Lost Scrolls books. So Lost Scrolls is a series, an Avatar: The Last Airbender series, where every book is a different element. We start from water, go to earth, fire, air, and it's basically every book has 3 novelizations of 3 different episodes, and then fun facts about the nation that it's following, like what martial art its bending style is based on, what is their main product, their main export, what do they mainly eat, stuff like that. I really enjoy them. I read Earth, which is the second one, as I said, but you don't have to read them in order, not if you know Avatar, and why would be reading this? If you don't know Avatar, there would be no point to it, because you wouldn't understand it either. So I read the first one, Earth, for the first prompt for this readathon, which was read a book with a green cover, and I read Water for the prompt of one-word title. And I really do like these. Like, obviously I wouldn't buy them because they're novels, they're the main bulk of them is novelization of episodes, but it is really fun to read the episodes and kind of like be reminded of how much fun I had when I watched it. And I do love getting all the little tidbits on the nations. You know, like the world they built was obviously, even when I was watching it, I was like 10 years old. It was obvious that they put so much thought into the world and what it looked like. And yes, it did annoy me that Katara, Sokka, and Aang all went around in their clothes and nobody seemed to really notice at times that, that person's wearing an airbender's clothes. Isn't that odd? But I understand that they couldn't, now that would be a bit very hard to constantly change their clothes up, but it was obvious that they put so much thought into the world, and I just love learning more about the world, because like, why would you not want to learn more about a world that was put so much thought was put into it and that you really enjoy the world of? Like, obviously if it was a world I hated, like I wouldn't really want to read it as much, but you know. So yeah, that's this vlog. I read To Break a Covenant and Water.